Art Bellwether gripped his leather briefcase tighter as he approached his front door. The silence emanating from within unnerved him. No thundering bass from Delilah's music system, no teenage outburst from Brianna, just an eerie stillness that made his skin crawl. The county library, where he'd spent the last 9 hours organizing and cataloging rare manuscripts, had been his sanctuary. There, among the towering shelves and weathered books, he found purpose. Each tome had its place, each manuscript its designated spot. The library was his domain, where he wielded authority with quiet confidence, helping patrons locate obscure texts and maintaining order in his carefully curated world. The door creaked open, and an unfamiliar scent assaulted his nostrils. Expensive cologne mingled with cigarette smoke. Art's jaw clenched. Smoking was strictly forbidden in his house. It was one of his non-negotiable rules. His gaze swept across the living room, cataloging the disruptions to his meticulously maintained space. A crystal tumbler sat on the coffee table, amber liquid catching the light. Next to it lay a woman's silk scarf, certainly not one he'd bought for Delilah. The dishwasher hummed, still full of unwashed plates and glasses. Art's fingers twitched. Delilah always cleaned immediately after use. It was one of the few habits they shared. Well, if it isn't the man who loves the smell of old books more than his wife. Delilah's voice cut through the silence, dripping with contempt. She stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing an unfamiliar dress that hugged her curves, definitely not something purchased with his credit card. Art studied his wife, noting how her beauty had hardened over the years. The warm smile that had once captivated him had transformed into a perpetual sneer. Her eyes, once bright with affection, now gleamed with disdain. "Where's Brianna?" Art kept his voice steady, masking the unease churning in his gut. Delilah's painted lips curved into a mocking smile. "Oh, she's out with her real friends. Not that you'd know anything about having those." She paused, examining her manicured nails. "I'm sure she'd prefer to be with her real father anyway." The barb stung, but Art refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him flinch. He moved to the refrigerator, retrieving a can of water. The kitchen counter held more evidence of disruption. A half-eaten pizza from an unfamiliar restaurant, wine glasses with lipstick stains, and playing cards scattered across the surface. Who was here? His question came out soft but firm, like steel wrapped in velvet. "Just a few friends." Delilah's laughter held a sharp edge. "We had a little poker night. You know, the kind of social gathering you'd never be invited to." Art's nostrils flared at the distinct masculine scent lingering in the air. He turned away from Delilah's smirking face and headed toward their bedroom. The sheets lay twisted and rumpled, not in their usual pristine state. Designer clothes, ones he'd purchased for her, littered the floor like discarded trash. That night, as he lay beside his wife's sleeping form, Art's mind churned with suspicions. Each detail he'd observed formed a pattern, a picture he couldn't ignore. The expensive cologne, the mysterious scarf, the disorder in his usually immaculate home. All pieces of a puzzle he was determined to solve. He rolled onto his side, away from Delilah, and began mentally documenting every inconsistency, every strange behavior, every unexplained absence. His wife might mock his attention to detail, but those same skills would now serve a different purpose. Art Bellwether was many things: methodical, patient, observant. But above all, he was a man who demanded respect, and someone had crossed a line in his own home. As sleep eluded him, Art's thoughts drifted to the library's security cameras, the ones he'd helped install last month. Perhaps it was time to implement similar measures at home. After all, knowledge was power, and he intended to gather as much of it as possible. The darkness surrounded him like a cocoon as he plotted his next moves. Delilah had always underestimated him, seeing only the quiet librarian, the predictable husband. She'd never understood that his calm exterior masked a core of steel. If someone had invaded his territory, violated his trust, they would soon learn the cost of their mistake. Chapter 2. The Web of Deceit. The following weeks brought an escalating sense of isolation for Art. Each day, new cracks appeared in the foundation of his family life. Brianna, once his source of joy, now regarded him with thinly veiled hostility. Her transformation from loving daughter to contemptuous stranger cut deeper than Delilah's infidelity. "Hey, princess," Art attempted during breakfast one morning, sliding a plate of her favorite blueberry pancakes across the table. "How about we grab dinner at Giuseppe's tonight? Just the two of us?" Brianna didn't bother looking up from her phone. "Can't. I'm busy." "You haven't touched your food," Art noted, watching the pancakes grow cold. "Lost my appetite." Brianna pushed away from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. "Besides, Mom says Giuseppe's is for people with no taste. Like you." The words struck like physical blows, but Art maintained his composure. He watched his daughter storm out, noting how she'd started mimicking Delilah's mannerisms. The same dismissive hand gestures, the identical cruel smirk. During his lunch break, Art sought refuge at Benny's coffee shop. The small cafe had become his sanctuary, a place where he could drop his carefully maintained facade. Benny Rodriguez, his best friend since college, noticed the change in Art immediately. "Brother, you look like death warmed over." Benny slid into the booth across from Art, placing a steaming cup of black coffee between them. "What's eating at you?" Art's fingers traced the rim of his cup. "I'm losing everything, Benny. My home doesn't feel like home anymore. My wife." He paused, struggling to verbalize his suspicions. "And Brianna. She's becoming a stranger. Have you confronted Delilah?" Benny leaned forward, concern etching deep lines around his eyes. "Communication is key, my friend. Don't let things fester." Art nodded, though his mind was already formulating a different approach. That evening, he stopped by the theater and purchased 2 tickets to Phantom of the Opera, Delilah's favorite musical. He also selected an exotic orchid from the florist, its delicate purple blooms reminding him of happier times. The sound of laughter greeted him as he approached his front door. Male voices mixed with Delilah's distinctive giggle, sending ice through his veins. Art pushed open the door, stepping into what felt like an alternate reality. His living room had been transformed into an impromptu casino. Cards and chips scattered across his antique coffee table, empty wine bottles dotting various surfaces. 5 men lounged on his furniture, but Art's attention fixed on one in particular, Rhett Walker. The real estate agent sat too close to Delilah, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. She made no move to discourage the touch. A silver lighter bearing Rhett's initials lay on the table beside them, like a signature on a crime scene. "Art, honey." Delilah's voice held false sweetness. "Come meet my friends." She gestured around the room, but her hand lingered on Rhett's shoulder. "You remember Rhett, don't you? From the Chamber of Commerce meeting?" Art's fingers tightened around the orchid pot. "Of course. How could I forget?" "Pull up a chair," Rhett offered, his tone dripping with condescension. "We were just about to start another round. Though the stakes might be a bit rich for a librarian's salary." Laughter rippled through the room. Art placed the tickets and orchid on a side table, noting how Delilah didn't even glance at them. Her attention remained fixed on Rhett, her body angled toward him like a flower seeking sunlight. "No, thank you." Art's voice remained steady, though rage boiled beneath his calm exterior. "I just came to check on Delilah and Brianna." "Oh, how sweet," Delilah cooed mockingly. "Always the concerned husband." More laughter followed him as he retreated to his study. Through the wall, he heard Rhett's deep voice. "Poor bastard doesn't have a clue, does he?" Art sat at his desk, hand hovering over his phone. The number for Stevens' investigation agency glowed on his screen, a contact he'd saved weeks ago but hadn't yet called. His finger descended, making the choice that would change everything. "Mr. Stevens? I need your services. Discretion is paramount." Art's voice held no emotion as he detailed his requirements. "I want everything: photographs, recordings, DNA tests. Money is no object." As he hung up, Art's gaze fell on a family photo from happier times. Delilah's smile seemed genuine then, Brianna's love unconditional. But that reality had shattered, leaving only sharp edges that cut deep. He removed the photo from its frame, placed it in his desk drawer, and closed it with finality. The man who had always turned the other cheek was gone. In his place sat someone darker, someone willing to go to any lengths to uncover the truth. And when he found it, because he would find it, there would be consequences. Chapter 3. The Shattered Reality. The manila envelope sat on Art's desk like a ticking bomb. His hands trembled slightly as he broke the seal, though his face remained impassive. The DNA results spilled out, clinical and cold, destroying the last vestiges of his former life. Numbers and percentages blurred before his eyes, but one sentence stood out with brutal clarity. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. Art read it 7 times, each repetition driving the knife deeper. He had loved Brianna from the moment the nurse placed her in his arms. He had attended every school play, bandaged every scraped knee, celebrated every achievement. Now, those memories felt tainted, corrupted by the knowledge that another man's blood ran through her veins. The sound of laughter drifted up from downstairs, Delilah and Brianna sharing some private joke, probably at his expense. Art's fingers crumpled the paper's edge as he rose from his chair. The time for investigation was over. Now came the reckoning. He descended the stairs with measured steps, the DNA report clutched in his hand like a weapon. Delilah lounged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone while Brianna painted her nails beside her. The domestic scene might have appeared peaceful to an outsider, but Art saw only deception. "We need to talk." His voice cut through their chatter. Delilah glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. Her expression shifted when she saw the paper in his hand, recognition and defiance warring across her features. "Oh, so the pathetic fool finally found out." She laughed, but the sound held a hysterical edge. "Your precious library skills finally came in handy for something besides alphabetizing books?" Art said nothing, simply held out the report. Brianna snatched it from his hand, her eyes scanning the contents. Her nail polish bottle tipped, spilling red across the carpet like blood. "Dad's the town's biggest joke," Brianna spat, her voice filled with venom. "Mom needed 8 real men to feel satisfied. I hate having his worthless surname." The words struck Art like physical blows, but he refused to flinch. Instead, he felt something inside him harden, turning to stone. The years of love he'd given this girl, the sacrifices he'd made, all meaningless. "Congratulations," he said, his voice arctic. "You're not stuck with my name anymore. You're just another bastard in your mother's collection." He turned to Delilah, who had paled considerably. "I've already transferred her college fund to charity. Let her cry to her biological father. If you can figure out which one he is." "You can't do that," Delilah shrieked, jumping to her feet. "That money was for Brianna's future." "My money," Art corrected coldly, "earned by the pathetic librarian you so enjoy mocking. Consider it payment for 16 years of lies." Brianna launched herself at him, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you. You're not my father. You never were." "No," Art agreed, stepping back from her attack. "I was just the fool who loved you, supported you, and believed in you. My mistake." He turned away, his next words glacial. "You have 1 hour to pack your essentials and leave. Whatever remains goes to charity." "You're bluffing," Delilah sneered, but fear had crept into her voice. "This is my house too." Art pulled another document from his pocket, property records he'd obtained weeks ago. "Check the deed, Delilah. This house belongs solely to me. It was my inheritance from my parents. Or did you forget that detail while entertaining your poker buddies in my bed?" "We'll fight this," Delilah threatened, but her bravado was cracking. "We'll tell everyone what a monster you are." "Go ahead." Art's smile held no warmth. "Tell them how you deceived your husband for 16 years. How you turned my daughter against me while sleeping with multiple men under my roof. I'm sure the country club crowd will be fascinated." He watched them scramble to pack, their carefully maintained facades crumbling. Brianna sobbed as she stuffed clothes into bags, while Delilah made frantic phone calls that went unanswered. Art stood in the doorway, silent and immovable, timing their exodus. As they dragged their bags toward the door, Delilah tried one last time. "Art, please, we can talk about this. We're done talking." He held the door open, his expression carved from granite. "You wanted freedom from the pathetic librarian? Congratulations, you're free. Now get out of my house." The door closed behind them with finality. Art walked to his study, ignoring their continued protests through the door. He had research to do, accounts to freeze, statements to document. The betrayal had awakened something dark within him, something ruthless and unforgiving. The quiet librarian was gone. In his place stood a man who would systematically dismantle the lives of those who had wronged him. Let them underestimate him. It would make their destruction all the sweeter. Chapter 4. The Gears of Retribution. The familiar chime of Benny's cafe bell rang as Art pushed through the door. The aroma of fresh coffee and pastries reminded him of simpler times, when his life hadn't been shattered by betrayal. He chose his usual corner booth, away from prying eyes and curious ears. Benny approached, coffee pot in hand, his cheerful demeanor fading as he took in Art's rigid posture and cold expression. "You look different, my friend." He set down the coffee and slid into the opposite seat. "What happened?" Art's fingers tightened around the ceramic mug. "I found out the truth, Benny. About Delilah, about Brianna. All of it. The DNA test results?" Benny leaned forward, lowering his voice. "That bad?" "Worse." Art's voice carried no emotion. "Brianna isn't mine. Never was. 16 years of lies. Right under my nose." Benny reached across the table, placing a comforting hand on Art's shoulder. "I understand you're hurting, brother. But whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, be careful. Don't let this consume you." A bitter laugh escaped Art's throat. "Consumed? No, Benny. I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." He pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with neat handwriting. "They think they know me?" The quiet librarian who catalogs books and turns the other cheek. His pen scratched against paper as he added another note. "They're about to learn how dangerous knowledge can be in the right hands. What are you going to do?" Concern deepened the lines around Benny's eyes. "Justice," Art replied, his voice cold and precise. "Not revenge, justice. They destroyed my life piece by piece. Now I'll return the favor." Over the next hour, Art outlined his plans. He would start with Delilah's material comforts, her shopping accounts, her social status, her reputation. Then he'd move on to Rhett, dismantling the real estate agent's carefully constructed facade of success and respectability. "I've already made the first move," Art explained, showing Benny a series of complaints he drafted to Delilah's favorite boutiques. Anonymous reports about fraudulent returns, damaged merchandise, aggressive behavior toward staff. The store's fraud departments will freeze her accounts pending investigation. And Rhett? "I've spent weeks in the library's archives, researching his past real estate deals." Art's smile held no warmth. "It's amazing what you can find in old newspapers and public records. The man's career is built on lies and shortcuts." One anonymous tip to the licensing board about his questionable practices. "You've thought this through," Benny observed, refilling their cups. "I learned from them, Benny. All those years of mockery and disrespect, they taught me patience. They taught me to watch and wait." Art's pen moved across the page, adding another detail to his plans. "Now I'll teach them about consequences." Art spent the afternoon making calls from a burner phone he'd purchased specifically for this purpose. Each conversation was carefully scripted, each complaint meticulously documented. He contacted Delilah's favorite stores, Rhett's business associates, even their country club. "Hello, is this the membership committee?" Art's voice transformed, becoming concerned and professional. "I need to report some disturbing behavior I witnessed at the club last weekend." "Yes, it involves the Walkers." The seeds of doubt were planted, one phone call at a time. Art knew how rumors spread in their social circle, how whispers could destroy reputations. He'd watched Delilah weaponize gossip for years. Now he would use her own tactics against her. As dusk approached, Art made one final call, to Iris Thorne, a private investigator known for her discretion and thoroughness. "Miss Thorne, I have a job for you." Art's voice was businesslike. "I need everything. Bank records, phone logs, emails, social media. I want to know their secrets, their fears, their weaknesses." "Money is no object." "That's quite a scope," Iris replied, her tone professional. "Any particular areas of focus?" "Start with financial records. I suspect there's a pattern of fraud and embezzlement. Then move on to their social connections. I want to know who they've betrayed, who they've used, who might have grudges against them. You're not just looking for evidence, Iris observed. You're looking for allies. Knowledge is power, Miss Thorne. And I intend to have both. Art checked his notebook one final time. How soon can you start? I can begin immediately. But Mr. Bellwether? Her voice held a note of warning. Revenge is a complex game. Are you sure you're prepared for what you might uncover? I've spent 16 years living a lie, Art replied, his voice hard. The truth can't hurt me anymore. But it can certainly hurt them. That night, as Art reviewed his plans, he felt no remorse, no hesitation. The man who had forgiven small slights and endured countless humiliations was gone. In his place sat someone colder, someone willing to strike back. He opened his laptop, creating separate folders for each target. Delilah's file contained her shopping history, social media posts, financial records. Rhett's held real estate listings, business dealings, tax documents. Each piece of information was a weapon, waiting to be deployed at the perfect moment. The quiet librarian they had mocked and belittled was about to show them the true meaning of power. They would learn that knowledge, properly applied, could destroy lives as effectively as any physical weapon. Art closed his notebook, a sense of cold satisfaction settling over him. The game had begun, and he intended to win. Not with violence or brute force, but with careful planning and ruthless execution. Let them underestimate him one last time. Their arrogance would make their fall all the more satisfying. Chapter 5. The Walls Close In. The effects of Art's carefully orchestrated campaign began to manifest within weeks. Delilah's credit cards were declined at her favorite boutiques. Her social media accounts flagged for suspicious activity. The country club's membership committee launched a discreet investigation into concerning allegations. Iris Thorne's reports arrived daily, each one revealing new vulnerabilities to exploit. The private investigator had uncovered a web of financial misconduct that exceeded Art's expectations. Mr. Bellwether, Iris said during their weekly meeting, spreading documents across his desk. I found something interesting in Mrs. Bellwether's banking records. She's been maintaining a separate account, siphoning money from your joint savings. Art's expression remained neutral as he examined the statements. How much? Close to $200,000 over the past 5 years. Iris pointed to specific transactions. She's been clever about it, making small transfers that wouldn't raise red flags. But there's a pattern. And Rhett? His real estate dealings are creative. Iris produced another file. He's been involved in several questionable property flips, understating repair costs, overstating market values. The kind of thing that interests federal investigators. Art absorbed the information, adding notes to his growing dossier. Have you identified their weak points? Delilah's desperate to maintain her social status. She's been borrowing money to keep up appearances, getting deeper into debt. Rhett's business is largely built on reputation and connections. If either of those crumble, they both fall. Art's smile was cold. Thank you, Miss Thorne. Please continue your surveillance. The pressure mounted steadily. Delilah's favorite stores refused her business. Anonymous tips led to audits of Rhett's real estate transactions. Their carefully constructed world began to crack. Art observed the chaos from a distance, monitoring through Iris's reports and Benny's casual observations of town gossip. Delilah came into the cafe today, Benny reported, pouring Art's coffee. She looked different, worried. She tried using 3 different credit cards before one worked. And Rhett lost a big listing. Rumors going around about his business practices. People are starting to ask questions. Benny studied his friend's face. You're really doing this, aren't you? Taking them apart piece by piece? They did this to themselves, Art replied calmly. I'm just exposing the truth they tried to hide. The confrontation Art had anticipated finally erupted on a Tuesday afternoon. Delilah burst into the library, her designer outfit wrinkled, her makeup smeared with angry tears. What have you done? She hissed, approaching his desk. My accounts are frozen. The club is reviewing our membership. Even my own friends won't return my calls. Art looked up from his computer, his expression mild. Having trouble maintaining your lifestyle, Delilah? Perhaps you should ask one of your poker buddies for help. Or has Rhett's generosity run dry? You vindictive bastard. She leaned across the desk, voice trembling with rage. You think you can hurt me? I took 16 years of your life. I made you raise another man's child. You're pathetic. No, Delilah. Art's voice remained steady. I'm patient. And unlike you, I understand the value of knowledge. He opened a drawer, removing a thick file. Would you like to explain this account in the Cayman Islands? Or should I ask the IRS about it? The color drained from Delilah's face. You wouldn't dare. The same way you wouldn't dare sleep with multiple men in my bed? The same way you wouldn't dare turn my daughter against me? Art's eyes hardened. You taught me an important lesson, Delilah. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is off limits. I'll fight back, she threatened, but her voice wavered. I'll tell everyone what you're doing. Go ahead. Art gestured to the library around them. Tell them how the quiet librarian outsmarted you. Tell them how the man you mocked and betrayed is dismantling your perfect life. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. Tell them everything, Delilah. I want them to know exactly who destroyed you. She fled the library in tears, leaving Art to return to his work. He felt no satisfaction in her distress, no joy in her suffering. This wasn't about emotion. It was about justice, cold and precise. Later that evening, his phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Walker's real estate license under review. 3 major clients pulled their listings today. Art added the information to his files, updating his timeline of events. The walls were closing in on them, just as he'd planned. Their arrogance had made them careless, leaving trails of evidence he could exploit. He thought of Brianna, her cruel words echoing in his memory. She'd chosen her side, embracing her mother's values of materialism and manipulation. Now she would learn the cost of that choice, watching as their privileged world crumbled around them. Art closed his laptop, gathering his materials. The game wasn't over. There were still moves to make, pressure points to exploit, but the outcome was inevitable. They would learn that true power didn't lie in social status or material wealth. It lay in patience, in knowledge, in the ability to strike where it hurt most. Let them panic. Let them scramble to save their reputations and lifestyles. He would watch from the shadows, orchestrating their downfall with the same attention to detail he brought to organizing his beloved library. They had underestimated him for the last time. Chapter 6. The Unmasking. Art chose the coffee shop carefully, a small, unremarkable place on the outskirts of town. The location was deliberate, far from their usual haunts and social circles. He arrived early, selecting a corner table that allowed him to observe the entrance while keeping his back to the wall. The manila envelope sat before him, thick with documents and photographs. Each page represented a piece of evidence, a nail in the coffin of their carefully constructed lives. He'd arranged the contents meticulously, building his case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Delilah arrived first, her designer outfit slightly worn, her usual confident stride replaced by nervous tension. She slid into the booth, eyes darting around the nearly empty cafe. What do you want, Art? Her voice carried a tremor beneath its attempted disdain. Haven't you done enough? Enough? Art's laugh held no humor. I'm just getting started, Delilah. But I thought you and Rhett deserved a front row seat to the finale. What finale? Fear crept into her expression. What are you planning? Before Art could respond, the bell above the door chimed. Rhett Walker entered, his usual polished appearance showing signs of strain. His custom suit hung loose, as if he'd lost weight, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. This better be important, Rhett growled, dropping into the seat beside Delilah. Some of us have real jobs to protect. Real jobs? Art raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call your creative accounting and fraudulent property assessments? The licensing board might disagree. Rhett's face paled. You're behind the audit? The lost listings? Consider it karma. Art opened the envelope, spreading selected documents across the table. Or perhaps justice. You took what was mine. My wife, my daughter, my trust. Now I'm taking everything from you. Delilah reached for one of the papers, her hand shaking. Bank statements? How did you? The Cayman Islands account was clever, Art interrupted. But you got sloppy with the transfers. $200,000, skimmed from our joint accounts over 5 years. The IRS finds that sort of thing interesting. You can't prove anything, Rhett blustered, but his eyes fixed on the documents with growing panic. Can't I? Art produced a series of photographs, Rhett meeting with known criminals, Delilah entering hotels with various men, bank transfers to offshore accounts. I have copies of everything. Emails, phone records, financial statements. Enough evidence to destroy both of you. What do you want? Delilah's voice cracked. Money? Is that it? Art's laugh was cold and sharp. Money? You think this is about money? He leaned forward, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You destroyed my family, turned my daughter against me, made me a laughingstock in my own home. No, this isn't about money. This is about consequences. We can work something out, Red offered, desperation creeping into his tone. Come on, Art, be reasonable. Reasonable? Art's eyes blazed with controlled fury. Was it reasonable to sleep with my wife in my bed? Was it reasonable to mock me, belittle me, treat me like a fool? He pulled out another document. Was it reasonable to help Delilah embezzle my savings while you plotted to take my home? Their faces showed the truth. They hadn't known he'd discovered that particular scheme. Art continued, his voice steady and relentless. Here's what's going to happen. In the next few days, anonymous tips will reach various authorities, the IRS, the Real Estate Commission, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Your lives will be investigated, your crimes exposed, your reputations destroyed. You'll go down too, Delilah threatened weakly. Once people know what you've done, what I've done. Art gathered the documents carefully. I've simply exposed the truth. Unlike you, I have nothing to hide. He stood, straightening his jacket. Consider this meeting a courtesy, a chance to see the architect of your destruction. You won't get away with this, Rhett snarled, but remained seated, his former arrogance shattered. I already have. Art's smile was terrible in its calmness. You see, while you were busy mocking the quiet librarian, I was learning, watching, planning. You taught me an important lesson. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is off limits. Not family, not loyalty, not trust. He picked up the envelope, tucking it securely under his arm. Goodbye, Delilah. Goodbye, Mr. Walker. I'd wish you luck, but we both know you don't deserve it. Art walked out of the coffee shop, leaving them staring at each other in growing horror. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a cold certainty that justice was being served. They had chosen their path, betrayed his trust, destroyed his family. Now they would face the consequences of their actions. In his car, he opened his laptop, sending a coded message to Iris Thorne. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Monitor all channels. The response came quickly. Understood. Surveillance in place. They won't be able to move without us knowing. Art drove home to his quiet house, mind already working on the next steps of his plan. He'd given them a chance to see their fate approaching. Now they would watch helplessly as their world collapsed around them. His phone buzzed with a text from Benny. Just saw Delilah and Rhett leaving the coffee shop. They looked destroyed. You okay? Better than okay, Art replied. Justice is being served. He sat at his desk, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal. Each document represented a crack in their facade. Each photograph a nail in the coffin of their comfortable lives. The quiet librarian they had mocked and underestimated had become their worst nightmare. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles to fight. But tonight, Art allowed himself a moment of cold satisfaction. The mask had been torn away, revealing the truth they had tried so hard to hide. Their arrogance, their cruelty, their betrayal. All of it would be repaid in full. The game wasn't over, but the endgame had begun. And Arthur Bellwether intended to win. Chapter 7. The Downward Spiral. Delilah stared at her reflection in the boutique window, clutching her designer purse close. Through the glass, she could see the sales associates who once fawned over her now whispering among themselves. Her credit card had been declined again, the third time this week. I'm sorry, Mrs. Bellwether, the manager had said, her tone flat and professional. Your account has been flagged for investigation. We can't process any transactions until this is resolved. She fumbled with her phone, desperate to reach someone, anyone, who might help. Her social circle had shrunk dramatically in recent weeks. Former friends didn't return her calls. Country club acquaintances crossed the street to avoid her. Even her family had grown distant, their silence speaking volumes. Inside her apartment, a far cry from Art's comfortable house, bills piled up on the kitchen counter. Rhett hadn't answered her calls in days, not since the real estate board launched their investigation into his dealings. "This is all your fault," she'd screamed at him during their last meeting. "You promised to take care of everything. Now look at us." Rhett had laughed bitterly. "My fault? Who's been stealing from her husband for years? Who couldn't keep her mouth shut about our plans?" His handsome face had twisted with rage. "Art played us both, and you're too stupid to see how." Now, alone in her shabby apartment, Delilah picked up the latest notice from her bank. Another account frozen pending investigation. Her hands trembled as she poured herself a glass of cheap wine. No more expensive bourbon in her cabinet. The doorbell rang, making her jump. On her doorstep stood two men in suits, badges glinting on their belts. "Mrs. Bellwether? I'm Agent Thompson. This is Agent Sean. We're with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to ask you some questions about certain transactions." Across town, Rhett Walker sat in his darkened office, staring at his computer screen. His email inbox overflowed with cancellations. Longtime clients suddenly discovered irregularities in their paperwork. Properties he'd spent months arranging mysteriously found other agents. His phone buzzed. Another text from his lawyer. "Board meeting tomorrow. Evidence doesn't look good. Prepare for license suspension." Rhett loosened his tie, reaching for the silver lighter that had once symbolized his success. His fingers froze, remembering where he'd last seen it. On Art's coffee table, the night everything started falling apart. A knock on his office door made him flinch. His secretary, Sarah, poked her head in. "Mr. Walker? There are some federal agents here to see you. They say it's about the Morgan property deal." Rhett's face drained of color. The Morgan deal, his biggest scheme. The one he'd been sure would never be discovered. How had they found out? Then he remembered Art's cold smile at the coffee shop, his precise knowledge of deals that should have been buried. "Mr. Walker?" One of the agents stepped into the office. "We have some concerns about inconsistencies in your financial records." Meanwhile, in a small cafe across from the library, Benny watched his friend with growing respect and unease. Art sat calmly, sipping his coffee while reading news alerts on his phone. "Another one," Art murmured, showing Benny a headline. "Local real estate mogul under federal investigation." "You're really doing it," Benny said softly, taking them apart piece by piece. Art's expression remained neutral. "They did this to themselves, Benny. I'm just making sure they face the consequences." "And Brianna?" Benny asked carefully. "Have you heard from her?" "She made her choice." Art's voice held no emotion. "The money she thought would fund her college education is now supporting literacy programs at the library. A much better investment." Reports kept flowing in from Iris Thorne. Delilah's secret accounts exposed, her fraudulent activities documented. Rhett's business dealings unraveled, his corrupt practices laid bare. Their carefully constructed world collapsed like a house of cards. Art archived each piece of evidence, each development in their downfall. He didn't need to act anymore. The dominoes were falling on their own. Federal investigators, tax authorities, and regulatory boards had taken over, following the breadcrumbs he'd carefully laid out. In his quiet moments at the library, surrounded by his beloved books, Art reflected on the transformation. The passive husband they'd mocked had become the architect of their destruction, not through violence or scandal, but through patience, knowledge, and calculated precision. The same attention to detail that had made him an excellent librarian had made him a ruthless adversary. Each piece of evidence carefully preserved, each step of their downfall meticulously planned. He received one final text from Iris. Delilah spotted leaving Federal Building. "Looked rough. Want me to follow?" "No need," Art replied. "The authorities can handle it from here." The wheel of justice turned slowly, but it turned. And Arthur Bellwether had ensured it would crush those who had betrayed him. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The country club dining room buzzed with whispered conversations. Art sat at his usual table, calmly enjoying his lunch while chaos erupted around him. The morning papers had carried the first wave of revelations, detailed exposés of fraud, corruption, and betrayal. "Did you see?" A woman at the next table hissed to her companion. "Delilah Bellwether, using stolen money to fund her lifestyle. And poor Arthur, working all those hours while she—" "And Rhett Walker," her friend replied. "The SEC is investigating all his deals. They say he's been running a Ponzi scheme with property investments." Art buttered his roll, savoring each bite as the gossip swirled. He'd arranged for the information to break simultaneously across multiple channels: newspapers, social media, professional organizations. The truth he'd gathered spread like wildfire through their social circles. His phone vibrated. A message from Delilah's sister, Caroline. "Art, I don't know what to say. We had no idea what she was doing. The things she said about you. We should have known better." He deleted the message without responding. Their support meant nothing now, their concern coming far too late. Across the room, he spotted members of the club's board huddled in discussion. They'd already frozen Delilah's membership, pending investigation. Rhett's name had been struck from the club roster entirely. A shadow fell across his table. Thomas Morgan, one of Rhett's biggest clients, stood there looking uncomfortable. "Arthur," Morgan shifted his weight. We owe you an apology. The way we treated you, believing their lies." "Save it, Thomas." Art's voice remained pleasant but firm. "You chose your side. Now live with it." The dossiers he'd compiled continued to circulate. Each revelation sparked new investigations, new consequences. Delilah's wealthy friends discovered she'd been stealing from their charity foundations. Rhett's business partners found their own reputations tainted by association. Art had ensured the evidence reached exactly the right people: tax investigators, banking regulators, professional licensing boards. Each piece of information triggered another avalanche of consequences. In his office at the library, Art reviewed Iris's latest report. Delilah had been seen moving out of her apartment, her designer wardrobe reduced to a few suitcases. Rhett's office stood empty, his name already removed from the building directory. "Your revenge is complete," Iris noted during their final meeting. "They're finished in this town." "Not revenge," Art corrected her. "Justice. They chose to destroy lives for their own gain. Now they're facing the consequences." He paid her final invoice without haggling, adding a generous bonus. Good information was worth its price, and Iris had proven invaluable. The local paper's society columnist requested an interview, hoping to hear his side of the scandal. Art declined politely but firmly. He didn't need public vindication. The truth spoke for itself. That evening, as he sorted through his mail, he found a tear-stained letter from Brianna. "Dad, I know I don't deserve to call you that anymore." It began. Art dropped it unopened into his shredder. She had made her choice, chosen her side. His charity donation would fund other children's education, children who understood loyalty and gratitude. His phone rang, Benny calling with the latest update. Rhett's being indicted, his friend reported. Federal prosecutors found evidence of mortgage fraud going back years. He's looking at serious time. And Delilah? The IRS seized her accounts this morning. They're talking tax evasion, wire fraud. It's not looking good for her. Art nodded, though Benny couldn't see him. Actions have consequences. They're learning that lesson now. The quiet librarian they'd mocked had orchestrated their complete destruction. Not with violence or scandal, but with information, carefully gathered, precisely deployed. Knowledge truly was power, and he had wielded it like a weapon. Chapter 9. Solitude and Renewal. Art unlocked the library's front door, breathing in the familiar scent of books and knowledge. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This had always been his sanctuary, and now it felt even more like home. He moved through the stacks, running his fingers along familiar spines. Each book in its place, each section perfectly ordered. The chaos of recent months had never penetrated this space. "Good morning, Mr. Bellwether," Jenny, one of his assistant librarians, greeted him. "The new literacy program materials arrived. The one funded by your donation?" Art nodded, pleased. The money that would have funded Brianna's education would now help dozens of children discover the joy of reading. A better legacy than supporting ingratitude and betrayal. He settled at his desk, reviewing requests and organizing the day's tasks. The routine brought comfort, but he was different now. Stronger. Harder. The man who had turned the other cheek was gone, replaced by someone who understood the true value of power. Benny dropped by during lunch, carrying their usual coffee order. "You seem at peace," his friend observed. "After everything that's happened, I am at peace," Art confirmed. "Justice has been served. The truth is known. What more could I want?" They sat in comfortable silence, watching patrons browse the shelves. Art had never needed the social world Delilah craved. His world was here, among the books and knowledge she had mocked. Later, sorting through donation requests, he paused at one particular letter. The local women's shelter needed books for their library. Without hesitation, he approved a generous grant. Let something good come from the ashes of betrayal. His phone remained silent. No more desperate messages from Delilah's family, no more pleading text from Brianna. They had learned, finally, that his forgiveness could not be bought with hollow apologies. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows as Art shelved returned books. Each volume in its proper place, each section maintaining its perfect order. Like justice, he thought. Everything returning to its proper balance. A young girl approached, clutching a book to her chest. "Mr. Bellwether, could you help me find more like this one?" Art smiled, genuinely pleased. This was his true calling, sharing knowledge, guiding young minds. Not playing social games or enduring mockery for his choices. "Of course," he replied, leading her through the stacks. "What interests you about this one?" As he helped her select books, Art felt the rightness of his path. He had faced betrayal with strength, met cruelty with justice. The quiet librarian had proved more powerful than any of them had imagined. That evening, closing the library, Art paused to appreciate the peaceful silence. He was not broken, not defeated. He had emerged stronger, wiser, more resolute in his principles. The man who loved order and knowledge had used those very tools to achieve justice. Let others underestimate him. He knew his own worth now, his own strength. Art locked the door, his steps confident as he walked away. Behind him, the library stood silent, a testament to the power of patience, knowledge, and carefully executed justice. He was at peace with his solitude, his choices, his newfound strength. The betrayers had reaped what they'd sown, and Arthur Bellwether had emerged victorious, not through violence or vengeance, but through the quiet power of truth and justice. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Oak Ridge County Library stood transformed, its expanded wings housing new reading rooms and digital learning centers. Art Bellwether surveyed his domain from behind his desk, now bearing the title Director of Library Services. The promotion had come 3 years ago, recognition of his innovative literacy programs and community outreach initiatives. The Bellwether Literacy Foundation, funded by what would have been Brianna's college money, had grown beyond his initial vision. It now supported reading programs across 3 counties, focusing on underprivileged children and adult education. The betrayal that had sparked its creation had metamorphosed into something truly beneficial for the community. Art checked his watch, almost time for his meeting with the foundation's board. His fingers brushed against a newspaper clipping tucked in his desk drawer. The headline read, "Former real estate mogul Rhett Walker sentenced to 15 years. He kept it not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that justice, though slow, was inevitable. Mr. Bellwether? Jenny, now his head librarian, appeared at his door. The board members are arriving. And there's something else you should know. Art raised an eyebrow. Go on. Delilah was seen in town yesterday. She's different. Working as a waitress at the diner on 5th Street. His expression remained neutral. The news stirred nothing in him. No anger, no satisfaction, just cold indifference. Thank you, Jenny. Please show the board members to the conference room. The fall of Delilah Bellwether had been spectacular and complete. After the federal investigations, she'd lost everything. Her social status, her designer wardrobe, her wealthy friends. The last Art had heard, she'd been living in a small apartment in the poor part of town, working minimum wage jobs to survive. Rhett Walker's fate had been even more severe. The federal prosecutors had uncovered decades of fraud, leading to a 15-year prison sentence. His real estate empire had crumbled, his properties seized, his reputation destroyed. He would emerge from prison an old man, penniless and disgraced. Brianna had attempted contact multiple times over the years. Letters, emails, even showing up at the library once. Each attempt met the same response, complete silence. Art had meant what he said about cutting her from his life. Her betrayal had been absolute, and his response equally final. The last he'd heard, she was struggling through community college, working part-time jobs to support herself. The comfortable future she'd taken for granted had vanished, replaced by the harsh reality of living with her choices. Benny Rodriguez had expanded his cafe into a successful local chain, with Art as a silent partner. Their friendship had deepened over the years, strengthened by the trials they'd weathered together. They still met regularly for coffee, though now they discussed business ventures and community projects rather than personal betrayals. "You never married again," Benny had observed during one of their coffee meetings. "No need," Art had replied. "I have my books, my foundation, my work. Not everyone needs the complications of romance." Iris Thorne had retired from private investigation, but not before teaching Art valuable lessons about information gathering and strategic planning. He'd applied these skills to his professional life, becoming known for his thorough research and precise decision-making. The library's success had brought unexpected benefits. Art's reputation had transformed from the quiet librarian to the shrewd administrator. His opinion carried weight in community matters, his support sought for various initiatives. The very qualities Delilah had mocked, his attention to detail, his love of order, his careful planning, had become the foundation of his success. As Art prepared for the board meeting, he reflected on the changes 5 years had brought. The man who had endured mockery and betrayal had emerged stronger, more respected, more influential. He hadn't just survived their betrayal, he had transcended it. The conference room buzzed with activity as board members discussed the foundation's latest initiatives. Art took his place at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. These were community leaders, business owners, educators, people who now sought his counsel and valued his judgment. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "let's discuss the expansion of our adult literacy program." The meeting progressed smoothly, decisions made with the precision and clarity Art demanded in all things. Afterward, walking through the library's reading room, he passed a literacy class in session. Adults of various ages bent over books, working to improve their lives through education. This was his true legacy, not revenge, but transformation. Later that evening, closing up his office, Art noticed a familiar figure through the window. Delilah stood across the street, staring at the library. Her designer clothes were long gone, replaced by a waitress uniform. She looked older, worn down by the consequences of her choices. Their eyes met briefly through the glass. Art's gaze held no emotion, no anger, no pity, no recognition. He simply turned away, gathering his belongings to leave. She was nothing to him now, less than a stranger. Walking to his car, Art recalled the day 5 years ago when he discovered their betrayal. The pain had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. Like a forest fire clearing deadwood, it had burned away weakness and fostered new growth. His phone buzzed, a message from the State Library Board. They wanted him to serve as chairman of their education committee. Another recognition of his expertise and judgment. He accepted the position with a brief, professional response. The drive home took him past familiar landmarks. The country club where Delilah had once reigned now welcomed him as a respected member. Rhett's former real estate office housed a community education center, partially funded by the Bellwether Foundation. The wheels of justice had turned full circle. Art's home had changed too. Gone were the traces of Delilah's chaotic presence. The space reflected its owner, organized, peaceful, purposeful. Books lined the walls, their ordered presence a testament to his unwavering values. A letter lay unopened on his desk, the latest attempt at contact from Brianna. Like all the others, it would go straight into the shredder. Some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness, some bridges permanently burned. The evening news played quietly as Art reviewed proposals for new library programs. A familiar name caught his attention. Another of Delilah's former social circle had been indicted for fraud. The dominoes he'd set in motion years ago were still falling. Benny's words from years ago echoed in his memory. Don't let this consume you. But Art hadn't been consumed by revenge. He'd been refined by justice. The quiet librarian had become a force to be reckoned with, his influence extending far beyond the library's walls. The next morning, Art arrived early at the library, reviewing the day's schedule. A new shipment of books needed cataloging, grant proposals required attention, and the Foundation's quarterly report needed finishing touches. Jenny appeared with his morning coffee. There's a reporter from the city paper wanting to do a story on the Foundation's success. Should I schedule an interview? Art considered briefly. Yes, but focus on the programs and results. The personal history isn't relevant. He'd never spoken publicly about the events that had sparked the Foundation's creation. Let people draw their own conclusions. The results spoke for themselves. Hundreds of lives improved through education and literacy. The morning sun streamed through the library windows as Art began his day. The quiet tick of the clock, the rustle of pages, the soft murmur of readers. This was his world now. He had built something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. 5 years had transformed everything. The man who had been mocked as a passive librarian now commanded respect throughout the community. The foundation born of betrayal helped others build better lives. The quiet strength that Delilah had scorned had become his greatest asset. Art Bellwether had emerged from betrayal not just successful, but triumphant. He had shown that true power lay not in social status or material wealth, but in knowledge, patience, and unwavering principle. The price of betrayal had been paid in full, and justice had been served. In the end, he had created a legacy far greater than revenge, a testament to the power of knowledge and the importance of integrity. The betrayers had reaped the consequences of their actions, while their victim had risen above their petty machinations to achieve genuine success and respect. The quiet librarian had won not just the battle, but the war. And he had done it without compromising his principles or losing his fundamental nature. The man who loved order and knowledge had used those very qualities to build a better future, not just for himself but for his community. Art closed his office door, ready to face another day. The past was settled, justice had been served, and the future held endless possibilities. He had not just survived betrayal, he had transcended it, emerging stronger, wiser, and more resolute than ever. The betrayers had lost everything, while the man they'd mocked had gained more than they could have imagined. It was the final proof that justice, though slow, was both inevitable and complete. Arthur Bellwether had written his own ending, and it was one of triumph rather than tragedy. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.